The year is 1991. The summer movie season is a battlefield of giants. Schwarzenegger, he's melting into a vat of molten steel in Terminator 2. Kevin Costner is redefining the outlaw myth in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And a certain mouse-eared studio is betting $85 million that the next great American icon isn't a cyborg or an archer, but a stunt pilot in a leather jacket and a brass helmet. Now on paper, it was the perfect plan. Disney wanted their own Indiana Jones, a piece of Pulp Americana that they could sell on lunchboxes and theme park tickets alike. They had the visionary, a director of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, a cast of prestige actors, and some of the most sophisticated practical effects ever committed to celluloid for that time. But as the Art Deco curtains rose on the 21st of June, the high-flying hero hit a pocket of air turbulence that no one saw coming. This is the story of The Rocketeer, a film that was built to soar, destined to crash, and eventually rediscovered as a masterpiece of pure, unadulterated nostalgia.
I myself despise nostalgia because it's so old.
To understand the DNA of The Rocketeer, you have to kind of look back further than, well, the 90s. You have to look at the 1930s, an era of Saturday morning serials. Those grainy black and white adventures where heroes like the King of the Rocket Men punched Nazis and saved the girl before the clock ran out. In the early 80s, writer and artist Dave Stevens channeled that era into a stunning indie comic book. Stevens wasn't just a cartoonist, he was a romantic. His art was a love letter to the streamlined curves of the Spruce Goose and the pin-up glamour of Betty Page. When Hollywood came knocking, Stevens was protective. He didn't want a parody, he wanted a tribute. After a brief flirtation with Stephen Miner and William Deere, the project landed at Walt Disney Pictures under the Touchstone banner. The studio saw the success of Batman and Indiana Jones, and they thought they had found their golden goose. So they hired Joe Johnston, a man who had literally helped build the Star Wars universe at ILM, to bring the jetpack to life. The road to the runway, however, was paved with creative friction. Disney brass initially pushed for a modern day setting, perhaps thinking a 1930s period piece was too old-fashioned for this MTV generation. Johnson and Stevens, they stood their ground. They knew the magic wasn't just in the actual rocket, it was in the world of the Bulldog Cafe, the oily hangars of the Bigelow's Air Circus, and the looming threat of the pre-war espionage. The script underwent countless revisions, moving from a gritty noir to a more whimsical, family-friendly adventure. The budget began to swell, eventually topping $40 million, a massive sum in 1991 when you think about it, as the production realized that recreating 1930s Los Angeles would require more than just a few vintage cars and a dream.
So I need all the money I can get.
Casting the lead was really the next hurdle. The studio, they wanted a name. They looked at Kevin Costner, Bill Paxton, hell, even Dennis Quaid. But Joe Johnston saw something in this relative unknown actor named Bill Campbell. Campbell had that quintessential all-American quality, a real mix of earnestness and slight clumsiness that made Cliff Secord feel human. Opposite him, the studio cast a young Jennifer Connelly as Jenny Blake. While the comics featured a more provocative version of the character, Connelly brought a more grounded, luminous intelligence to the role, shall we say, that elevated it beyond the classic damsel in distress trope. The real genius, however, was in the villains, and yes, Timothy Dalton, fresh off his tenure as James Bond, stepped into the boots of Neville Sinclair, playing a swashbuckling Errol Flynn type who secretly was moonlighting as a Nazi spy. Dalton delivered a performance of delicious scenery-chewing menace, to say the least. Alongside him was the legendary Paul Sorvino as the mob boss Eddie Valentine, and the towering tiny Ron Taylor as the Frankenstein-esque henchman Lothar, brought to life through the over-the-top prosthetic work by Rick Baker. When production finally began, the challenge of the jetpack became literally weight on the crew's shoulders. This was an era before the old seamless CGI. If you wanted to see a man fly, you had to hang him up from some wires or use some high-speed miniatures. The flight sequences were a marvel of practical engineering and some clever editing. The production utilised a mix of life-size puppets, stuntmen on complex rigs, and some breathtaking matte painting to create a Los Angeles that felt both vast and intimate at the same time.
It has the sheen of like old Hollywood glamour.
The X-3 rocket pack itself was a work of industrial art, designed to really look like something Howard Hughes might have just actually bolted together in a fever dream. And then there was the score. James Horner, a composer who really understood the power of the brassy, soaring theme, delivered what many considered to be his finest work. The music didn't just accompany the film, it gave the Rocketeer its wings, providing a sense of awe and optimism that really defined the entire production. But as the film approached its release date, the marketing machine began to sputter. Disney, perhaps a little unsure on how to sell a period piece superhero movie to kids who were obsessed with The Simpsons and Vanilla Ice at the time, they leaned heavily on the Art Deco aesthetic. The posters were actually really beautiful pieces of work of some great graphic design, but they didn't really show the actors' faces. And on opening weekend, the Rocketeer found itself sandwiched between the juggernaut of Robin Hood and the anticipation for Terminator 2. It opened in fourth place, earning a modest $9.6 million, while not an outright flop in the traditional sense. It was a disappointment for the studio, expecting a franchise starter. The critics, well, they were a bit divided. Some praised the charm and the craft, while others found it a little too earnest, actually, too, shall we say, gee whiz, for a decade that was rapidly turning towards the cynical and the extreme.
God, get with the times, dude. Yeah!
Beyond the theatrical cut, the film is a treasure trove of what could have been. Eagle-eyed viewers will spot plenty of references to the golden age of Hollywood, including the climactic meeting at the Griffith Observatory, the same location used in A Rebel Without a Cause. There were rumours of an alternate ending involving a more direct confrontation with the Nazi forces and several subplots involving the mob's uneasy alliance with the FBI were, well, at the end of the day, trimmed for pacing. Perhaps the most famous, shall we say, mistake is a brief continuity error during the film's explosion on the Zeppelin. But the film's craftsmanship is so high that, let's face it, these minor hiccups only add to its, shall we say, vintage charm.
Vintage. So adorable.
Like many films of the early 90s, The Rocketeer found its true audience in the aisles of their local blockbuster. It hit the shelves in 1992 on Laserdisc and VHS, earning the movie an additional $23.1 million in rentals. Not bad. The Rocketeer was released on Region 1 DVD by Buena Vista Home Entertainment on the 17th of August 1999. Sadly, with no special features on the disc. A 20th anniversary edition Blu-ray disc was released on the 13th of December 2011, and as of this time of making this video, there are no plans to release a 4K HD version of this film.
You need to make that happen.
So I saw this in theaters back in 91, and I do remember enjoying it at the time. Mind you, I was like 16 at the time, and I loved just about every movie I saw as well. So look, that aside, I'm pretty sure I haven't seen this since then, so that's almost 35 years ago.
You're old.
So as you can imagine, I was actually feeling pretty pumped to watch this because it felt like I hadn't seen it. Anyway, I have been on a bit of a pulp comics kick at the moment since I've just reviewed The Phantom, and I've actually got the Green Hornet serials coming up in a future review, so make sure you check that one out. So, look, was it as good as I remember? Well, in a word, no. Okay, look, let me explain. It's still a fun movie. I love the characters. I love the 1930s aesthetic. I love the actors, they're great. But it's just one thing for me as a more mature moviegoer nowadays is, well, it's a bit slow and the script's not really that solid.
Oh, well, do tell.
Now, unlike the Phantom movie I saw a few weeks ago, that movie just powers on from start to finish with like action in the style of those great old-timey serials. But this movie crawls along at a snail's pace, taking forever to set up and get going, only to really hit its stride in the last 15 minutes with some great action-packed fun. But there's a lot of setup prior to that. Now look, don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed watching it, but the first half of the movie just drags a bit, and for that I would probably give this like a reasonable, maybe 7 out of 10. Definitely worth checking out, that's for sure, if you haven't seen it, or rewatching it if you haven't seen it in ages. And actually, look, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts about this. Look, I'd love to hear your takes on whether I'm right or wrong, because, yeah, I don't know. I think it could have been better.
I'll see you in the comments section.
Today, The Rocketeer is, let's face it, a certified cult classic. It has been embraced by fans everywhere and celebrated with a nice high-definition restoration on a Blu-ray that actually highlights the warmth of Hiro Narita's cinematography. It's a film that people in some cinephile circles cite as the gold standard for how to do a period adventure right. Its influence can be seen everywhere, from retro-futurism of Captain America, the First Avenger, funnily enough, also directed by Joe Johnston, to the aesthetic of that modern steampunk. It didn't launch a cinematic universe, and unfortunately it didn't make Campbell a superstar or household name, but it did something much more difficult. it captured that kind of lightning bolt in a bottle. The Rocketeer remains a testament to a real specific moment in filmmaking history, a bridge between the old school magic of Hollywood's past and the blockbuster ambitions of, well, its future. It reminds us that sometimes you don't need a dark backstory or a gritty reboot to tell, you know what, a great story. Sometimes all you need is a brave pilot, a fast jetpack, and some gum to patch that leak on your fuel tank. It is a film that invites us to look up into the sky and wonder, what if? And for 90 minutes, it makes us believe that a man can really fly without the help of some computer graphics. It is quite simply the last great adventure of the pre-digital age.
Man, those were the good old days.
Next week on the show, we're going to look at Hero High from 1981. It's a forgotten Filmation cartoon that I really can't wait to check out. Thanks for watching.